Welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast, where we will go beyond the balance sheet with our guests, not only to share from our personal experience as financial advisors of over 25 plus years, but also to learn from our guests about the issues and topics that are important to them. Our firm specializes in taking care of the financial plans for individuals and small businesses by helping our clients identify their individual goals and taking a conservative and ongoing approach to helping accomplish them. We are located in Hickory, North Carolina, and look forward to continuing to serve our clients and our community. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Hello and welcome. I am Ryan Edwards with Southeast Retirement Planners, and we'd like to welcome you to today's podcast, the Southeast Retirement Planners podcast, and today's topic is protecting your assets when entering long-term care. And we are happy and thankful to have Susannah Brown, an attorney here in Hickory, and this is one of her focuses. She's joined us on a previous podcast, another topic, which is the essentials of estate planning, and thankfully we've been able to get a little bit more of her time to cover this very important topic, one that we get asked quite a bit in our offices. Everybody wants to know, how can me or my beneficiaries keep my hard-earned money? So with that being said, Susanna, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your practice and the focus of it, please?
Oh, thank you for having me, Ryan. Sure. So like Ryan said, I'm Susannah Brown, and I'm with the law firm of Anthony & Brown. We're located at 430 First Avenue Northwest here in Hickory, right in downtown. And I practice primarily in elder law, and that includes asset protection for long-term care, which is what we're talking about. And we also do estate planning and estate administration and things like that. And I'm sure you get asked that question a lot, because we get asked that question a lot. It's definitely a hot topic because there are devastating costs that are associated with long-term care if you ever have to go into a nursing home.
Right. It's a very large bill, and many people, unfortunately, are not prepared for those extended stays in a long-term care facility.
Exactly. As
soon as this is out on the internet, this podcast will be, if someone clicks on it and finds it a year from now, those numbers will have changed.
Absolutely.
The cost, unfortunately, is going up at astounding rates. But there's also different levels of care. So the more care needed, the more expensive it is. Currently, the one that we always hear is the care for an Alzheimer's patient is certainly one of the more pricey monthly costs in the long-term care territory. But just normal possible deterioration of someone that can't do 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, that comes with a cost. And many people want to try to stay at home as long as possible, but eventually, even for those individuals, if it's prolonged, they have to start spending some of their assets. And that's what they're worried about, is what if it runs out?
Right.
And with that being said, it kind of gets us into talking about what happens? Once you spend down, how much can you actually keep?
Yeah, well, and I want to address a little bit kind of what you were talking about with the cost of care and wanting to stay at home, and then we'll talk about the spend down piece too. And you probably get this also, and I just kind of wanted to clear this up. So many people think that, well, I'll never qualify for Medicaid. I get this a lot. And I kind of want to make sure that people understand there's a big difference between your normal Medicaid and long-term care Medicaid. And you sort of started to touch on that. And I want people to understand, Medicare is insurance. And Medicare will pay for rehab when you go, you break a hip and you go to rehab, and you hear they'll pay for the first 100 days, and you're lucky. You're lucky if you'll get them to pay for the first 100 days. But then after that, if if they say, okay, we're not going to let you have rehab anymore, you now need skilled nursing care. Well, that's private pay, and a lot of people don't realize that. Well, private pay, you're looking at anywhere from $7,000 to up to $12,000 a month
Right.
For skilled nursing care. It's extraordinarily expensive, and that's either going to come out of your pocket for private pay, or you're going to have to somehow figure out how to get qualified for Medicaid, and that is long-term care Medicaid. And most people, don't realize then that, there is a possibility you very well can get qualified for long-term care Medicaid, which is where your spend down comes from.
Right. So that type of care could not kick in until one has spent down
That's right.
their assets.
Exactly.
Or had to sell some assets, correct?
Exactly. And so let's talk about that for a minute. And I will delineate that we aren't talking about special assistance. And just so people know that's out of the scope of this, there is something called special assistance in North Carolina, but we are going to be talking about skilled nursing care.
Okay.
So you do have to spend down your assets, and you'll hear people say the $2,000, and you hear people say that you can't have more than $2,000 and qualify for Medicaid. And in general, that's correct. Now, if you have a spouse, it's a little bit different. They sort of half your assets, and half goes to the spouse, and then the half that the institutionalized spouse is considered, their half has to be spent down to $2,000. It's not quite that simple, but for purposes of this, we'll say it is. Now, there are certain things you can keep. And when I say keep, I'm going to qualify that. I'm going to say for purposes of qualifying for Medicaid. Now, there's a difference between qualifying for Medicaid and dying owing Medicaid. So for qualifying for Medicaid, you can still own your residence, and you can have equity in it for up to $595,000. Now that number may change.
Right.
It goes up every once in a while, but right now it's $595,000. You can keep your residence and qualify. Okay. I will change that up in a minute whenever I say you die owing Medicaid with that residence. You can have your personal effects. You can have clothing, furniture, jewelry, stuff like that. They're not going to take that. You don't have to spend that down. You can have one vehicle. All right. You can have a burial policy or burial contract that's irrevocable. Mm-hmm. You can have insurance contracts that have face values up to $10,000. So what I mean, like cash value.
Right.
If you could pull out cash value up to $10,000, and I mean total. Mm-hmm. So, nothing over that.
Right.
You can have certain interest in real estate. So life estates are not countable, and tenancy in common property is not countable so long as it's not with a spouse. Certain trusts are not countable. Now that is a loaded topic right there.
Yeah,
so just know when I say that, I'm talking about a very specific, special kind of trust. Do not think that just because you have your asset in a trust, it is protected. It must be a very, very special Medicaid asset protection kind of trust for it to be protected. Mm-hmm. Not any old vanilla trust will protect it from Medicaid, and that's so important to remember. Mm-hmm. Certain annuities can be protected from Medicaid, but again, they are very special kind of annuities. Certain promissory notes can be protected from Medicaid, but they're very special promissory notes. Right. It's complicated. Those are the things that you have to know when you're talking about Medicaid. So those are the things you can keep. When you're talking about a spend down, so all of a sudden you are in a nursing home and you've got too many assets and you've got to spend them down. There are smart ways that you can spend your assets down so that you don't just give everything to a nursing home, or you don't just do it in a way that you could have done it in a much more intelligent manner. Mm-hmm. You can always pay off debts. You can do repairs upon homes. There are Medicaid compliant annuities that sometimes can allow you to have streams of income to a spouse that may still be at home, which can be a really smart way of doing it. There are ways to protect property. There are ways to do it with certain deeds, but again, you need to make sure that you talk to an elder law attorney or someone who is well versed in how those work. There are Medicaid asset protection trusts. They have look-back periods, and in an emergency kind of setting, they typically won't work unless you have a lot of assets,
Right.
and then you can pay past that look-back period.
Okay.
But there are definitely things you can do.
And that leads into another thing. There's with that being said, that there's definitely things you can do.
Yes.
What it comes down to is what I'm. All these things you have to sit down and speak with someone like yourself that knows what to carry out your wishes, because you need to plan ahead. And how far ahead? Because I get asked that a lot. What if some people think they're just protected if I put my home in my kids' names. And that to me, if someone goes on under care, and I may be jumping ahead, but how early does someone need to plan, I guess is the question.
And that's a great question. So my default answer for that is you need to plan as early as when you need a power of attorney. Because to me, one of your best defenses you have if you're concerned about asset protection for long-term care is a good power of attorney document that has asset protection provisions in it that you give your agent. So that is my answer for that.
Okay.
So you should be, if you're worried about it, you need that document.
Right.
And that is your very first planning document. So, I would say as soon as you feel like you need a power of attorney.
Okay.
And truth be told, none of us are promised a healthy tomorrow.
Exactly.
So as early as, feasible, that to me makes good. And I'm not saying that you should necessarily go and put your home in someone else's name or your children's name. That comes with its own complications. And you certainly should sit down with an attorney who can go over the pros and cons of doing that.
Because that's not always in someone's best interest
Absolutely
by any means.
not.
So I'm going to carry that to a part B, because many times it's not a younger individual or a middle-aged person. It's someone in their 60s or 70s that comes to us and comes to you and says, hey, I'm really concerned. I want to make sure I move some assets so that they're not taken by Medicaid in what they call the spin down, or if I ever have to go into care and I've had to spend up my money. So let's say that someone has done the moves they're supposed to make, but because they've maybe done them too late, or were not promised the next day, or they fall ill or have to have some type of long-term care assistance, and they start, is there what's called a look back? That's what I hear.
Is the look back. So the best way I know how to explain the look back period, and the way I explain it to my clients, is anytime you have to go and knock on the government store. So you knock on the government store and say, hey, look, I need help. I can't afford this. Government's going to say, great, but you better not have given anything away for less than fair market value in the past 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
And if you have, we're going to penalize you. For every $6,810 you've given away, we're going to penalize you 1 month of care. Well, 1 month of care is usually going to cost you more than that.
Right.
So they're probably going to penalize you worse than what you gave away. And that 5-year look back is, we're talking about skilled nursing care. Okay, if it's special assistance, it's actually 3 years.
Okay.
But for skilled nursing care, it's 5. It's not 7. You'll hear it's 5. Could they change it? They could.
I was going to ask you.
But for now, it's still 5. They could change that divide, that 6,810. They could change that number. But for now, that's what it is. Notice I said for fair market value. So if I have clients who come and say, hey, can I sell my kid my house for $100? No, not unless your house is worth $100.
Right.
You can't do that because it must be for fair market value. But
Right.
I will say that in the eyes of, for Medicaid purposes, fair market value is almost always going to be tax value.
Tax value, okay.
Because that's what they have to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have the resources to go and appraise everything.
Right.
So it's either tax value or less if you can get a appraisal that is a non-biased appraisal showing it is less.
Right. Okay. Well, that's helpful. This is such good information. So they, as we recorded this tonight, I'm talking to a group of people, and we're talking about economic and tax updates, and some of the legislation that's passed that's going to affect clients from a tax standpoint, some of those bills, not now, but in the future, could have changes to some of the things we're talking about as well.
You saying that brings up a very good point that I'm sure you've heard too. You'll hear people say, well, can I give $15,000 and it not count? And I want clients to know, or people out there to know this too, that $15,000 deals with the gift tax. It has nothing to do with Medicaid. Mm-hmm. If you give $15,000 away and then go and try to apply for Medicaid, they will penalize you.
That's a penalized.
So just know those are two different issues. One is dealing with taxation from a gift tax perspective. The other is dealing with giving away resources that the government thinks you should have kept to utilize for your care.
Right.
So yes, don't do that.
Right.
Just don't do that.
Well,
if you're worried about Medicaid.
Correct. And the Medicaid type care is you're asking the government to
pay for
your care, and in my thoughts, and I know in some situations, obviously individuals that's the only thing they can resort to. But someone else is making the decision in a situation where the government's paying for it. You may not be if you're in a facility, you may not be the one you want to be in. You
Right.
may just be in the one with an open bed.
That's right.
And that, to me, when I envision my latter years, and I'm as anybody would be hopeful that it wouldn't be a situation where I'm having to go through long-term care, but the statistics are there that 2 out of every 3 are going to need some form of long-term care as we live longer. And I just would want to do the proper planning ahead of time, so I was able to make my own decisions.
And I will say this, that with proper planning with trust or, with placing assets perhaps with loved ones, however it is that makes sense in your situation, if the government helps subsidize part of that cost, then there could also be a pot of money to help pay to improve your quality of life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that strategic planning can
Correct.
sometimes offer.
Correct. And with the clients, we're always talking about these items. With anybody we sit down, we make sure we carve out time to see if long-term care insurance or what their long-term care plans are. If we're just meeting with them for the first time, is it how much longevity do they have in their family? Many times people are already having to care for ones. We have several instances that it's impacting our clients' lives, financial lives in retirement, because they're having to help assist financially their parents.
Yes.
Who are needing that type of care, and not just from a time standpoint, from a financial standpoint is what I'm talking about. And all these situations, what I think as we conclude today, what it really boils down to is knowing that you have to work within the parameters, mm-hmm. knowing what those parameters are, and doing, most importantly, the planning ahead, the proper planning ahead is really the keys, correct?
Yeah, and reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of people who don't realize that there are things you can do. And don't wait till it's too late. If you have a loved one who has a diagnosis of early dementia, or you see some of the signs, don't wait until they're at a point they cannot execute documents.
Yes.
Don't wait. I mean, those are progressive diseases. Mm-hmm. The longer you wait, then they're going to lack legal capacity to do that. And then we've lost a whole lot of avenues to help. Right. Just be proactive, and realize that, there are things that can be done. Right. But you need to actually go and seek that help. And there's a lot to be said for getting information.
Exactly.
Getting one office conference isn't going to break someone's bank.
Right.
Even if you choose not to do anything, just getting that initial information oftentimes can be very, very helpful.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I know this is a kind of a hot topic for many people as they are entering their retirement years, or maybe dealing with a parent or grandparent or a loved one that someone they're taken care of.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, certainly Susanna's information it's on the screen for you. Reaching her office or email, certainly she would be open to scheduling some time with you. But then also, if you have any questions and for us as well, certainly as we cover these items daily for our clients and within our meetings, we encourage you, if this is the first time viewing our podcast or listening to our podcast, our website is seretirementplanners.com, SE for Southeast. And we offer any individual a complimentary financial checkup for those individuals we don't work with, where they can come in, spend an hour together, get to learn more about their situation. They get to learn more about us, and we just like to offer that to you if you don't currently work with us. But we would invite you to find out a little bit more about our firm and the services we provide by going to our website. And these are all important topics that we're trying to cover, and this one is certainly very prevalent, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. But proper planning prevents poor performance is what a coach told me one time. So, and I think it would certainly apply to this. So we appreciate your time today in joining our Protecting Your Assets When Entering Long-Term Care podcast. We hope you'll join us on a few future episodes soon. We'd encourage you to go online and like or subscribe on our YouTube channel or Spotify or also Google Podcasts. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA, SIPC. Southeast Retirement Planners is not affiliated with LPL Financial or registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor.